Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Meter, an MPSC podcast, where we explore the people, policies, and progress shaping Michigan's energy and telecommunications future. I'm your host, Mike Byrne. As we close out our year, we're taking a look back at some of the biggest moments, milestones, and stories from the Michigan Public Service Commission in 2025. From clean energy advancements and reliability improvements to consumer protection and community engagement, it's been a year full of important work across Michigan's energy landscape. Joining me today are all three of our commissioners, Chair Dan Scripps, Commissioner Katherine Peretick, and Commissioner Shaquille Myers, to count down the top 5 themes of the year and reflect on the progress we've made together. So now that we've set the stage for today's episode, let's jump in and talk about our top 5 themes of the year, starting at number 5. So let's start out with public outreach and national leadership. I think the commission has taken steps this year to try to broaden our outreach, both in terms of engaging with folks within the state. That also sort of translates into work that we do at the national level as well. So would love to hear a little bit about how we've been approaching those issues in 2025. Maybe Chair Scripps, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think it really is 2 big themes within this. And one of them is around the additional engagement in communities themselves, and whether that's public hearings or town halls, holding commission meetings in different areas, and the work that our new community partner network is doing. There's just a number of folks that have been involved in that. We've got Holly Belker, who's the head of our public outreach section, leads that work along with Braid Quinn and Steve Kimbrell and Jennifer Brooks. But also the work that we're doing to try and get additional ways of engaging with people, including this podcast and Jamie Curtis's leadership in putting it together. We're at Instagram. So just a number of different ways, both in terms of how we're communicating and then how we're actually getting into communities across the state.
Yeah, Julie behind the camera right now for Ashley. We're putting this all together for us. And yeah, it's we ended up going quite a few different places this year across the state to hold both our formal public hearings as well as formal commission meetings, and giving the public more of an insight into just our normal operations as a commission. I know we went to Auburn Hills, we went to Gaylor after the ice storm. I know we did in Grand Rapids, in Detroit. And then some virtual too. We did a few virtual events as well.
Yeah, I enjoyed the trip to Auburn Hills, if for no other reason, Shaquille, than it's your alma mater, the campus of Oakland University. That must have been a fun home for you.
It was. It's always good to go back to OU and hang out with my fellow Grizzlies. But having just joined the second half of the year to the commission, it was nice to get out to Grand Rapids and Auburn Hills. Having worked for statewide electeds, it's not strange for me to go visit other places outside the state, and happy to see the commission doing that same work and continuing that work, right? Like, what we do can be a mystery to people, and I think this allows them access in a way that they don't have to come to Lansing. Again, being on Instagram, you got to go where the people are, and social media is just another chance for, again, us to like remove the veil of giving people a behind the scenes look. I think the community network, partner network, I think is really cool. Us having 3 community liaisons getting all over the state. Again, it's about accessibility, and I think it's so important that the commission has expanded that work.
Yeah, in addition to getting out into the communities, one of my favorite things that happened this year was actually bringing a national audience to Michigan. And so Dave Chislia, who leads our Gas Safety and Operations Division, also serves as the national chair of the National Association of Pipeline Safety Regulators, or NAPSR. And they had their annual conference this year in Grand Rapids. And so really bringing pipeline safety representatives from across the country. I was there, got to speak right after somebody from Nebraska, but we really had all 50 states represented, got to highlight the city of Grand Rapids and all that it has to offer, but also Dave's leadership. And our pipeline safety team is just among the best in the country, truly best in class. And it was great to shine a spotlight both on our state and on the leadership of Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we leave number 5 on public outreach, I just want to make sure to shout out for Instagram. If you aren't already following us, please do. That was actually an idea that came from one of the community members. It was a conversation among community members when we were doing our public hearing in Detroit. They said you really need to be in more channels, more places where people can reach you. So our communications manager, Andrea Taylor, was really the one who kicks that all off, and it's really fantastic. I definitely hope you check it out.
Great. Okay, let's move now to number 4. And this is always a focus of the commission, but there's just so much work that's been done in 2025 on increasing and strengthening customer protection. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the work that we've done in that space this year.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with something that's kind of top of mind for a lot of people right now, and that's large loads that are interconnecting, like data centers. One of the major cases that we had this year in front of us was the Consumers Energy's large load tariff. And that really had some first in the country customer protections to ensure that no costs are passed on to other customers as a result of any new large load additions like data centers that join the system. And David Isaacson was really instrumental to making sure that we got that right.
Yeah, I think that's really important because there's a lot of focus on data centers, and rightly, in terms of some of the negative consequences. But I think it's important to understand the differences between Michigan's regulatory framework and other places, and that trying to avoid the downsides, sort of harness the best parts of load growth and the opportunities to spread the fixed costs over a larger volume of sales, while also protecting against the challenges that we've seen in too many other states. And I think the work that our staff and Dave certainly was leading in that, in terms of adding protections in on the consumer side, was really important. I think the whole data center thing is probably important enough that we should have a whole episode of Behind the Meter dedicated to that. So I'll look forward to that earlier.
I jot that down. Yeah.
I mean, I think data centers is top of mind across the country, right? Everywhere we go or anything you're looking at around energy, data centers is a part of it. But I think the major issue that customers are thinking about is, what does this mean to me? Like, is this increased cost? Or are these data centers going to pass on the cost? And so I think the work that Dave and a number of our other staff did around being creative with protections and setting really the standard for anything that we do post that consumer's decision, I think that's a good guideline for us as future data center, whether it's tariffs or contracts or whatever come before us. Also, again, when thinking about customer protections, I also think about affordability. And so there was MEAT legislation that passed last year when I worked in the legislature, and this year I've gotten a chance to help implement that expanded eligibility and funding for our assistance programs, and that's been a really exciting thing too. Thinking about affordability and reliability, I think we're making strides towards that.
Yeah, I think the assistance is another place where we've got some real leadership at the staff level. In fact, Chris Forrest, who manages our customer assistance team, was just recognized with the Outstanding Customer Service Award at the LARA, the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Employee Recognition Award ceremony just earlier this month. And it's well-deserved recognition, for Chris individually, but for the team that she leads in terms of connecting people who call in or email in and are needing help and providing them with the resources that are available. So it's just a great group of people.
And another angle for the customer protection is how we are restoring critical customers after the power goes out, like hospitals or schools or nursing homes, police and fire stations, those sorts of centers that are really crucial to providing essential services to their communities. They need to have the most reliable and most resilient service out of anybody. And we spent a lot of time this year thinking about how do we make that even better, and how do we make sure that either their power never goes out, or if it does, it's restored very quickly. And staff members Julie Ginnivan and Alex Marisi were really important for making that, putting together these new recommendations and requirements for our utilities to make sure that everybody gets restored really quickly.
Yeah. And we spend a lot of time, and rightly so, on the energy side, but I don't want to leave off telecommunications in this space, because there have been a lot of challenges with the Lifeline program. It's just such a critical, important piece for providing assistance for households that need help in paying their phone or broadband bills. It's a federal program. Michigan has long been a leader in the number of customers who actually participate, and Ryan McEnany and the team in our telecommunications division has really led that. And, while we're talking about telecommunications, it's also, I think, one of the highlights of the year was actually seeing the new overlay area code in Detroit go into effect. So people in the 313 aren't going to lose their 313 area code, but there's now a new overlay district, 679. And we didn't choose 679 just to appeal to the middle schoolers among our listening audience, but when you can add in some 67, I think it's important that we're reaching both this generation and generations to out.
Really captured the essence of 2025, Mayor, I think. All right, let's move on to number 3, managing the energy transition. We, in 2023, the state enacted historic energy legislation that increased the renewable portfolio standard, adopted a clean energy standard, adopted stronger energy waste reduction standards. And so we've been in the midst in 2025 of a number of activities to try to push that legislation implementation forward and related pieces as well. So we'd love to hear a little bit about how we're continuing to work through managing the energy transition.
Yeah, I think this is another place where the work that Michigan is doing looks different than a lot of other states. And I like to say that we're responsibly managing the energy transition. There's a real level of ambition in terms of getting to the clean energy targets. We got to make sure that we're doing it while keeping the lights on and keeping rates affordable for customers. And I think you've seen that in terms of how we've implemented some of the 2023 legislation considerations of affordability as we're developing the new filing requirements for integrated resource plans as long-term utility plans, but also looking at sort of the broad range of assets, whether they're on the distribution system, the transmission system. We earlier this year approved the first high voltage lines in more than a decade, the first interstate lines in 50 years. I mean, this just means that we have access to power sources in a broader area, and that allows us to more cost effectively manage this transition as we work through the details.
And as a result of approving those that first in a decade transmission line, we realized that we needed to have some better guidelines in place, filing guidelines in place, because we haven't done this in so long. And we need to make sure that any new transmission line siting projects that are coming to the state of Michigan do incorporate enough public input and do find that optimal route with the minimal impact to the local community. And our staff member, Naomi Simpson, and Verbal team have been really instrumental in putting together those new filing guidelines, which will ultimately become filing requirements for a new transmission line.
Absolutely.
On top of the transmission lines, thinking about the renewable projects, we established an entire renewable energy and energy storage siting team to process that. It's led by Sarah Molkoff. And they're processing the siting applications as they come through, given the new siting authority given to us by the legislature.
And, speaking of legislative initiatives over the last couple of years, we've had grant programs, first low carbon and then renewable energy and electrification programs. And this year, it was another set of really impressive projects all across the state. And so nearly $5 million in grants to that renewable energy and electrification infrastructure enhancement and development program, appropriated by the legislature and then implemented by Lynn Beck and Amy Rittenhouse and the whole team in our new business operations and procurement section, or BOMPS.
Yeah, I joined the team. I joined you all, I think, halfway through the process. And I was just really impressed with how Amy and Lynn had outlined everything. Like, you can come in halfway through a process and feel lost, but I was able to jump right in based on the way the information was presented. And yeah, it was quite impressive. Applications from all over the state, everything from solar projects to charging stations, and being really thoughtful about how we spend the money, the grant money, making sure we covered both rural and urban areas, and again across state kind of overlay.
And I would also like to shout out our energy efficiency leadership and the recognition that we've gotten in our energy efficiency programs that we have in Michigan. We're number one in the country for our energy efficiency programs as ranked by ADEEE. And also shout out for our best-in-class low-income energy waste reduction work group that's led by both Brad Banks and Elizabeth Yeager. That combined with the low-income energy work group, along with Karen Gold and her team's work on the energy efficiency, we're really making progress to make sure that we're using less energy. That the cheapest energy is the energy that you don't use. So reducing that amount that we're using and is really crucial to that affordability for low income and non low income customer.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe before we just move off this, the one other place, as we look towards 2026, Palisade's been come back online, and the first nuclear plant to be shuttered to be brought back online, and the announcement earlier this month as the U.S. Department of Energy is providing $400 million to Holtec, which owns the Palisades facility, not just for Palisade, but for the next generation small modular reactors. I think it's another example of how we're managing the energy transition responsibly and really sort of taking a forward-looking approach as sure.
That's great. And as we move ahead to number 2 on our list, which is reliability, the bringing back nuclear, potential for new nuclear will certainly help to contribute to that. But reliability broadly is always at the top of all of your minds, the staff here at the commission. So would definitely like to get some insight into the types of things we've done in 2025 as it relates to improving reliability in Michigan.
Yeah, we've made some major improvements and investments. Thanks to the work of Nick Evans and his team, they're continuing to implement some of the results we got from an audit that probably happened before I started. I'm shouting it out, but we're seeing the work. As of the beginning of December, DTE now has a Q1 nationally. For all weather duration and frequency of outages, both at the system and the customer level. And despite this year's historic weather, the February-March ice storms impacting more than 13%, impacting 13% more customers than last year, the SAIDI, what is that? Sadie.
Duration about it.
All right, thank you. Our audience might also want to know, because not everyone knows. I'm going to go off the subject and say there's a lot of acronyms in this world that if you're a casual listener, you might be like, "What's that?" So yeah, SAIDI is only forecasted to increase by 3%, which again, considering the historic weather we had, that is quite an accomplishment. Again, we're always striving to be better, right? That's the goal. You're not going to get the perfection, and I think the results of this audit we're really seeing the difference.
Yeah, I agree, and that the always striving to be better, I think, had been the theme of this. But when you compare where we are to where we were just a couple of years ago, we've seen really significant improvements, 4 consecutive years of improvements. The federal government just this month issued their most recent weather or SAIDI information, and it's a tough story across the country, but one of the places that stands out is Michigan, and it's the 4th consecutive year that we've seen improvements. Significant improvements when you're looking at storms. This is 2024 data. And some of that clearly is weather, but some of it is also the investments and the focus that we've had for the last several years. And how do we make sure that we're delivering and our utilities are delivering better performance to the customers that they serve?
It really has been just a relentless focus that we've had on reliability and improving the reliability of the system over the last many years. And I know that weather helped some in DTE service territory this year. They had fewer storms than normal. That's part of how they were able to get to that first quartile performance. But that is not the whole story. Some of that story, they can't coming from 4th quartile performance. DTE this year for all weather, duration, frequency, and the customer average cut durations are up from 4th quartile up to 1st quartile this year. And a lot of that is from this relentless focus that we've had on improving reliability through many different angles, but certainly implementing the results of that first distribution system audit that was completed recently has been just a huge benefit for us. And consumers' energy, Shaquille, you mentioned that they're actually only forecast to decrease a little bit in terms of their system average duration index, but they got hit really hard with that ice storm earlier this year. So even when they got hit 13% harder, they're actually only increasing their outage percentage by 3%. So the duration by 3%. So it's been a lot of work, and I am so happy that they're seeing some results.
Yeah, and maybe just one thing before we leave this, there's obviously a lot of focus on the electric side, but also on the gas electric coordination. This has been a theme in Michigan going back to 2019, and making sure that as we increase the amount of gas fired generation on the electric side, that we actually have sufficient gas supply. And that, I think, has shown up in a number of places, including approval of infrastructure in both our peninsulas, both the UP and the Lower Peninsula. And Kevin Spence and his team just do a great job. I feel like I had the opportunity to participate in a national effort on this, and I just kept coming back to Michigan examples in terms of the national model that I think we're working to implement here in the state.
One of the first states to actually do that, and now there's the very similar to what we do in Michigan is now national. Yeah.
All right. So we've had our countdown. Yes, we're at number 1. And maybe the biggest story of the year here for us was a transition in leadership at the commission level and welcoming Commissioner Myers to the MPSC, which is, you're number 1.
I feel like that's a cheer, like, number 1. No, it's been an incredible transition year to go from working staff for 20 years almost, and I've had a tremendous chance to do, or I've had a great chance to do tremendous things in my career, right? And then to come over here again at this critical time when we're in this energy transition has been very cool, to say the least, but also the welcome that I've gotten from you, Chair Scripps, and you, Commissioner Peretick, and also the staff. You will notice that throughout this episode, we've shouted out different staff members. The team at the MPSC does an incredible job. Even when you talk to interveners, stakeholders, they all compliment the work of Mike, you and your team. And just yesterday, there was a love fest about how professional and how thorough you all are compared to, companies that work across the country. They're like, most commissions don't have the kind of team that we have. And so I feel really lucky to have joined at this time and to work with the level of expertise that the staff and my fellow commissioners bring.
My favorite things is that as you joined, you mentioned earlier that the implementation of the MEP reforms that the legislature passed, the implementation of the 2023 clean energy laws, and you were central to both those on the legislative side. And to have that background and expertise as we work through the details of implementation has just been incredibly beneficial, I think, to the commission, but also the people that we serve. And I'll say it's been fun to see you step into national leadership roles as well, and your background with infrastructure and telecommunications and other things, and then now serving on the NARUC Committee on Telecommunications, where we haven't had representation on that committee in a couple of years, and also your role on the National Association's Committee on Critical Infrastructure. It's just leveraging that 20 years in public service and the expertise that you developed and making sure that we're represented and stepping into national leadership roles. It's been fun to watch.
Thank you, Chair. It has been really fun to participate and be a part of these national organizations. So again, it's been an interesting little less than 6 months.
Yeah, you really got your fresh perspective and just your willingness to learn and to jump in and ask the questions. And I feel like we have been making better decisions as a result of many of the questions that you've asked. So I really appreciate your willingness to really just jump into this the crazy world they live in, that we're giving everybody, all of our listeners here, a perceptive intro to that. And maybe just one final staff shout out. And notice we've been kind of incorporating a lot of our staff into this end of year wrap up because they really are so much of who we are and what we do. But Mike Byrne, our Chief Operating Officer, at the head of it all, and our regular podcast host. So just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've done this year, and wanted to make sure that everybody knows that you are not only an expert podcast host, and that they get to hear your voice every month on this podcast, but that you also lead our entire staff. You are the Chief Operating Officer and in charge of this fantastic crew of 200 that we have to make our work better every single day.
The man behind the
Something like that. I appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words. It's all a tribute to the staff. The staff are awesome, as you all have pointed out. I appreciate your kind words as it relates to the staff, especially knowing that, there are a lot of acronyms in this job. There's a lot of stuff you've had to pick up on, and hopefully you didn't feel like people were punking you for the first.
Of course I did. That like 2 weeks. I was like, y'all are playing a game on me, but no. I have quickly caught on because, again, the staff, Kayla, who is my advisor, who is great, provided me with a cheat sheet that I still keep up on my screen a lot of times because, again, it's a different language, rad and red and a bait. Right. I think I'm going to start making acronyms.
Well, we appreciate you all being on BTM this year. This has been great to sort of recap, what we've been through in 2025. There's a lot of incredible work that's happened here at the commission, a lot of incredible work by the staff here at the commission, and there's more to come in 2026. So we'll have an opportunity to keep getting together at that point. Really appreciate all of you who have been tuning in to the podcast. I don't know that we had a sense of like where this might go when we first launched it earlier this year, but the reception has been great. And so we'll keep trying to do our best to keep you informed on the issues related to energy and telecommunications that are really important in this space, and hope that you join us again in 2026 behind the meter. Thanks.